Hello, so I wanted to explore an idea today, something I've been thinking about to do with politics, or rather this sort of growing public fascination there's been with politics over the last decade or so. You could say there's been a bull market in politics. And I suppose all bull markets come to an end sooner or later. And so the question is, when will this one end? When will this public fascination with politics get exhausted? And I suppose the low for fascination with politics came shortly after the turn of the century, the general election of 2001. And I can remember that well. That was like full Western complacency at that point. It was also, of course, 9/11. And I remember it well because I had a residency on the Radio 4 show Loose Ends at the time. And each week in the lead up to the election, I had to do a party political broadcast by one of the parties. And the Tories were quite easy to satirise. You just sort of did a sort of old duffer, and they were so divided and out of touch. And Labour was a lot harder. And I based my sketch around the idea that they never seemed to have an opinion about anything. There was always a third way. And that election saw a turnout of just 59% compared to 71% in the previous election of 1997. It was the lowest turnout since World War I. And Labour's win was dubbed the quiet landslide. And I had to write another speech that week after the election. And so I called it the victory speech by the apathy party. People just were not interested in politics. They didn't care. But since then, so many things that have happened that have changed that. There was the phony premise for the Iraq war and all those protesters around the world who marched against it and went ignored. Technology has played an enormous role, especially social media. It's brought greater transparency to government and the things that go on, and also people who are able to see what's going on. They're brought into more immediate contact with their representatives, and they're better enabled to hold them to account. And ordinary people have been given this ability to actually shape and participate in the debate. So that's technology. There was also the reaction to the global financial crisis of 2008 when governments ordered banks to be bailed out and all that money to be printed, and the rich got richer, and that wasn't supposed to happen. And then, of course, we had here in the UK, we had that EU referendum, and here at last was an election that could actually change something. Your vote counted and was not lost, in your local majority. And I've always felt I've got a pretty good nose for trends. From an early age, I've been able to spot them. As a teenager, I used to pride myself in being able to spot what clothes or music would be popular next year, for an example. And one of my closest friends is a TV commissioner, and we have this running joke that whenever I submit a proposal to him, that film will get made in 3 years' time with a celebrity in the role I was pitching myself for. It's a running joke because it's happened so many times. Most recent example is 4 years ago I pitched a documentary series idea about Greek myths, and it never got commissioned. And a fortnight ago he sent me an article detailing almost to the exact word the exact same idea that I submitted. However, this one had a celeb in the main role, and so it got commissioned by the BBC. Now, I'm not claiming to be some great futurologist or a soothsayer, but what happens is if I have an idea, usually lots of other people are having a similar idea. If I make an observation, that thing is really good, lots of other people are making the same observation. And that's kind of how trends start to form. Lots of people have the same idea. And until the mid-noughties, I was never that interested in politics, and I started to get interested just as this huge bull market in politics was starting to take shape. But recently, I'm starting to notice I've kind of had enough. I'm starting to feel bored by politics. Perhaps I've got Brexit fatigue, and it'll get reignited once the withdrawal from the EU is complete and the next phase of negotiations begins. That's the amazing thing. We haven't even started on the main event, what our relationship with the EU will be. This is just the withdrawal agreement. But are people getting fed up again with politics? I don't think it's just me. I was at Comedy Unleashed last night, and 3 or 4 people said the same thing. In the US, incredulity and anger at Trump is morphing into something more like resignation. In Italy and Catalonia, they may still be simmering, but they're not the hotbuds that they were 2 or 3 years ago. And I ran into Paul Staines last night. He's the man behind the Guido Fawkes website. And I told him this idea that, maybe we're hitting peak politics. And he sort of went, oh yeah, I think you might be onto something. I think I feel the same way. And one obvious measure of interest in politics would be Guido's hit count, the number of hits his website gets. And so I asked him about that, and he said we've seen incredible growth in their traffic. They used to be happy if they got 100,000 hits a day, and now they're a bit disappointed if they don't get 300,000. But he said it's been like the last throes of a bull market when something suddenly goes vertical. And then he had this idea that maybe he should sell his site. And of course the problem is he doesn't know what else to do with his time. So maybe what I'm describing is sort of simple exhaustion in a bull market, and you pull back a little, consolidate, and then get set for the next leg up. But perhaps this parliamentary recess will give us that. But maybe it's something more. I've said this many times. My view is that technology is destiny. It's ushering in a new era of politics in which referenda will be more commonplace and democracy will be more direct than representative. And in such a scenario, the electorate are always going to be more engaged than they were in 2001 if they had more votes. But are we in the final throes of this phase of the bull market in politics? Has this bull market in politics peaked? And if so, I don't know, what are the investment implications of that? So that's my thought, that maybe we've hit peak politics. What do you think?